Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Satan and Coffee. I hope everyone's doing really well. It's good to see everybody in here this morning. So I do apologize for missing yesterday's stream. So, for the sake of transparency, the rebound that I've been going through with my ADHD medication got rather severe over the last week or so. So it was kind of hard to just feel even slightly motivated to do anything, really. So I do apologize. I just woke up super late yesterday and, I had to get my son ready for school. And by the time all of that was done, I just saw the time and it's just like, I just couldn't bring myself to do it. And, I took the morning and the evening to myself the last couple of days and feeling better now. So, have a plan in place to mitigate that rebound with the medication. Because unfortunately, with ADHD medication, yes, it helps you with your focus, but it's a stimulant. Stimulants, they increase serotonin and dopamine and, long acting or slow release ADHD meds, Ritalin in specific, lasts probably about 6-7 hours, roughly. I mean, for some people it's a little bit longer. You might be able to get 8 to 10. For me, it's roughly about 6-7 hours. So I wake up fairly early. So I wake up probably about 5:36, and I take it as soon as I wake up. So by the time 2 o'clock rolls around, it's already kind of tapering off. And then by 4 or 5, I'm just in just an absolute fucking pit of despair. So after discussions with my psychiatrist and, some adjustment, I think we have that mitigated now, so that's a positive thing. That's a good thing. But I just want to let you guys know, and for the sake of transparency, and I apologize for missing yesterday, which is why we're doing a show this morning. We are making up for yesterday's loss, and there's a subject that I really want to talk about that I had planned out, which is the lost power of old world magic. So the core thing that we're addressing this morning, core aspect, right, is the fact that, like, when I sit here and like all the research I've done on old world magic, old traditions, things like that, old world magic felt integrated. It felt dangerous. It felt effective. And for me, in my opinion, modern magic feels fragmented, aesthetic, and often shallow, right? And so looking into things, I feel that respect for tradition was a power amplifier for our ancestors. It amplified what they were doing, how they were doing it, all of these things. Eclecticism without foundation, I feel, is weakened that current. So we're not going down this road for like nostalgic purposes of like, old traditions and things like that, but let's just kind of like an honest autopsy of what may have broke between what our ancestors used to do and what we're doing today. by no means does this mean that, if you're an eclectic witch or something like that, that, your magic is broken and you're not powerful or anything like that. It's not an attack. It's just to say that the integration of magic into culture felt like it made it more powerful. Like the idea that, the magic that was practiced back then, it wasn't aesthetic, and in any way. It wasn't meant to look good. It was meant to function. Doesn't mean it didn't look good, but so I think to start here, like the first thing we need to do is clarify old world, right? So medieval and early modern European magic. So we're talking like necromancy, grimoires, ritual magic, all the folk magic, all these types of things. So we're talking probably medieval and early modern. Right, early modern Europe, Renaissance Hermetic, Kabbalistic magicians, right? So we look at like Bruno, Dee, all these things. They were not random witchy people. They operated inside coherent cosmologies, shared ritual languages, that clear chains of transformation, right? So teacher, manuscript, order, and by no means I'm not justifying or saying that you need an order to be powerful or anything. That I personally don't believe in them. I'm not a part of any orders. I've never been a part of any order. I'm not saying that I would never join an order. Just to have the experience, but I don't believe that it is necessary to be a part of an order to have power of any kind. And I think it's ridiculous anyone that thinks that that's a necessity. But if we look at like grimoires, like Sworn Book of Honoris or the Heptamerion, right? Or later the Key of Solomon, right? Functioned as strict procedural manuals, not inspiration boards, right? And again, I'm not saying that strict rules in practice are the ideas that I'm talking about, right? This is the thing, right? So I think a lot of people get confused when you talk about tradition in magic, that you need to do a ritual a certain way, you need to face a certain direction, you need to burn certain colored candles, incense, all these things. That's not what I'm talking about, right? There's something more to old world magic. Okay, there's an element to it that I think is missing in most of our practices today. There's just that there's that one piece to the puzzle that for some reason we just don't have it today, right? So, magic in the Middle Ages was kind of at a crossroad with religion, right? And early science. So there's a lot going on. Not to mention law, right? Most laws back then were religious. So magic back then, it wasn't like a side hobby, right? It wasn't like something, and I think that that's the part that's missing in today's magic compared to the old world. Is for most of us, it's just kind of something we do. We don't live it. It's not a lived experience. So when I say occultists of the old world, hail, Tyrone. I say magic of the old occultists of the old world. I'm not talking about some fantasy coven in the woods. I'm talking about people who lived in a world where their cosmology, their liturgy, their daily life, and their magic all spoke the same language. Right? You had a grimoire, a priesthood, a chain of spirits, a theology, and the law breathing down your neck. That this wasn't like vibes. This is a full system, right? And again, like I think that's kind of like the whole thing that's missing is like, everything about these people's lives was magic, right? I mean, yeah, I mean, they had their day-to-day life, you know, with most of them probably farmers, and they had their kids and stuff like that, but the magic, it wasn't like a side hustle. It wasn't like a thing that they did, you know, off on the side. It was, they lived it and they breathed it. And I think this is like one of the things that's like makes like the Norse pantheon so attractive to so many people. Because like when you look at the Norse pantheon and when you look at Norse paganism, I mean, yes, there's ritual and there's magic and there's spells and there's everything that, you know, exists and everything else. But the thing with Norse paganism, I think Norse paganism, even, you know, watered down modern versions of Norse paganism, it's about the lifestyle. It's about living with your gods, right? It's about living with your deities. It's about knowing that, like, you know, Odin, Thor, like that they're next to you all day, every day. You know, it's not something that watches over you. It's there. It's in your face. It's, you know, it's a guide on how to live your life, right? You know, and so I feel like Norse paganism, and again, even watered down modern versions of it, have something to teach us as occultists that I think we're missing, right? And an anecdotal aspect to this, right? So I just got this statue of Lilith yesterday. And oh, it's a beautiful statue. It's such a beautiful statue. She's holding this giant serpent and like kind of one hand and kind of looking it in the face, and has an apple in another. And I mean, you could argue that that's Eve and that's fine, but you know, for me, that's Lilith. And, you know, so I did, you know, some rituals last night with Lilith. And one of the things that I noticed, I did something that I never do, right? It's the first time I've done it, and my fuck, like the feedback was unmistakable. Like you couldn't confuse this shit, right? Even if you tried. And so the thing was, right, so most people, when they do work with like Lucifer or Lilith, right, there's like Mother Lilith, Father Lucifer, whatever, or they just say Lucifer and Lilith, and I'm one of the people, I just say Lucifer or Lilith, like I don't use Mother or Father. But I had this feeling, right, so I wrote out this kind of like prayer incantation, you know, for the work that I was doing, and I decided to use the words Sister Lilith. Right? Not as, you know, like literal, like, you know, Lilith is my fucking sister. No, but more like kind of like, because when I think of, you know, priesthoods and monks and stuff like that, they call each other brothers and sisters, right? Because it puts everybody at a level playing field, right? And so, and obviously, like in most of these, like if you look at a priesthood, right, well, who's the father? God's the father, right? So that means like, you know, you're what I'm saying? Like, you know, you're the people that you congregate with that are nuns or priests or whatever, they're brothers and sisters. And so it wasn't in the sense of like, oh, this is like, you know, Lilith is my literal fucking sister, right? Like I'm not, you know, deranged, right? I'm not delusional. But it was more, you know, hyperbolic in the sense of like, you are my equal, addressing Lilith as like almost an equal or a peer, rather. Right? Because a peer, I think peer is better because, like, you know, here, at the end of the day, like, let's be completely honest, we're not all made equally. Like, we all have equal opportunity to do the same things, but some of us are just better at other things than other people. Right? So, like, you know, for example, my brother, you know, he's younger than me, but that motherfucker could lift 10 times more. He could probably lift 10 of me, right? You know? And so, you know, and I know for a fact that, you know, if I tried to lift him up, like, I would just die, you know? You know? So we're not all created equally. We have equal opportunity as a base to develop into having abilities that are equal to or better than other people. But we all focus on different things, and therefore we become better in certain things than other people are in that specific area. There's nothing wrong with that. That's just life, right? You know, to say that we're all created equally and we're all equal, like in the sense of like, you know, there's nothing that makes, you know, there's absolutely nothing about you that's better than me. I don't think that's true. There's definitely going to be things about you that are better than me, or at the very least, you are better at, right? Anyway, so I did this ritual. And so during the point of me saying the prayer, incantation, whatever you want to call it, I interjected the word sister, Sister Lilith. And, you know, I went through and I did 3 times on the incantation. And then I took, you know, the material that I was using and I burned it like I normally do, because I burn fucking everything. For me, fire is just major in magic. Like, I mean, burn everything, burn it all. And I know some people don't agree with that, but, you know, that's just me. It's more, you know, representative than anything else. And holy shit. This fucking thing, it blew up in my fucking hand, right? Like normally when you grab like, you know, the photos and the whatever that you're using, especially if you're using just like normal like fucking printer paper, right? The bottom catches fire and it creeps up, and you know you throw it in your cauldron and you let it fizzle. No, man, like I put it over the fucking, you know the candlelight, and it just. Like, I was like, what the fuck? But then it wasn't even just like that, but it was like the sensation that was like attached to that was like almost agreement. Was like almost like finally somebody fucking got it. You know? And so going at like verbally, going into ritual and calling on Lilith as a peer, I got a response back that I never get, you know, when I work with Lilith or anything like that. And the reason I know that it wasn't like the paper or anything like that. So I did 3 rituals last night. I did 2 client rituals and 1 for myself. And so that was a client ritual where that happened, but there's like kind of like a personal message that came through, even though it was a client one. And then I did the second ritual, which was also a client ritual, and that was with Lucifer, and I did the same thing. I think brother Lucifer, whatever, same paper, same printer ink, all that stuff. You know, burn the paper, slow burn, normal, right? And I use this. I've been using the same printer, the same ink, and all this shit for, you know, a year now, and you know my shit doesn't burst into fucking flames, right? It's not flammable like that. And so, and then I did the third one. The third ritual was for me personally, and I went back to Lilith, and you know, again, more came through, and I was just like, having that peer level like was just like eye-opening, you know, like actually like incorporating the idea of being a peer, being on the same level. I got such a better response. I feel like when you go to like things like Lilith and Lucifer and Belial and stuff like that, and you're like, you act like you're lesser than, like the way these entities function, however you come to them, that's how they're going to treat you. And so if you treat them as if they are higher than you, then they're going to treat you like you're lower than them. And if you go at them as an equal, they will treat you as an equal. And I feel like the response that you get treating these entities like equals, like peers, is so much more profound. So much more profound. And this ties into the old world magic thing, because one of the things that I think is important, like especially when it comes to like, you know, demonolatry and things like that, like if we look at the Sumerians and, you know, stuff like that, Mesopotamia, yes, they had their beliefs, they had their worship, but a lot of these practices, like a lot of old world occultists who didn't go into a ritual being like, oh, I'm lesser than you. Like, I mean, they came at this shit hardcore, right? And they treated, like, you know, the entities that they were calling on, you know, either like they were above them or, you know, at least at the same level, right? And again, it's just this full system. Magic is in everything that I do, right? Like, even where I work, like the space where I work, right? Like, I mean, obviously, like, there's a setup, right, that I have for you guys, like, that you see. Good morning, Maeve. Right? There's a setup that I have for you guys that you see, right? There's a little neon pentagram back there, you know, there's this shit that you can't really see, but they're like, you know, cloths, blankets, tapestries, whatever. And, you know, but what you don't see, what's in front of me, right, you know, is like, I have, you know, the sigil of Samael Lilith, and I have a baby Baphomet, and I have, you know, so much occult shit in front of me that I see and I look at all day, and there's a reason for that. It's not just because I think it looks cool. It's, you know, because it does something for the energy. Like, it allows that part to permeate in everything that I do. And I feel like that is, you know, I feel like that's why I'm able to obtain or go as far as I go, because I include my faith in everything I do. Is the whole reason I got this tattooed on my left hand. Like, it's not just a tattoo. It's a pact with myself. Like, I am left-hand path forever, right? And if you guys are wondering about the differences, just a little plug here. If you guys are wondering about the detailed differences between left-hand path and right-hand path and all of that shit, Dyra and I, for Adversary of My Adversary this Sunday, we're going to be doing an episode specifically targeted on that, right? So it's left-hand path versus right-hand path. And the actual differences between them. It was supposed to be an episode of Satan and Coffee, but I thought, like, because both of us get those questions all the fucking time, it would be nice to, you know, do that. And if you're wondering where to watch Adversary of My Adversary is done on Dyra's channel. So if you go to, you know, Black Magic or Black Witch Dyra, whatever it is on here on YouTube, the link is actually in the description for it. That's where Adversary of My Adversary is, or Aoma, right? AOMA, right? So tradition as a power engine, right? So tradition as constraint that creates depth, right? So fixed ritual sequences, right? Specific divine names, hours, tools, consecrations, right? Long preparation, fasting, confession, abstinence, crafting tools, like all of these types of things. Now, do we need them? No, we don't. And I've said this a million times, right? Like, like when it comes to divine names, hours, tools, consecrations, the one out of all of those that I find to be the most important, right, are the hours and times, planetary alignments. And the only reason I believe that these things are somewhat important in magic is because there is an understanding, a scientific understanding, at least partly scientific, that we understand the universe's energy. We know this much, right? The universe is energy. Everything around us is energy. Everything that is in us is energy. Like, the energy is always transferring and changing shape and things like that, right? Even the act of eating is just a transfer of energy, right? So if we know that the universe is energy and it's all around us, then it serves to reason that planetary alignments and hours and things like that will have certain advantages to them. Now, do I think that you need to be within a certain planetary alignment in order to do a very specific ritual? No, I don't. But I do think that if you do pay attention to the hours and the planetary alignments and all of these things, you will inevitably increase the likelihood of the functionality of the ritual and the magic that you're working. And our ancestors knew this. And we can see, you know, that they knew this, that they understood this. Like all of the research that we've done, for example, on Stonehenge, right? Stonehenge is not just a random structure, right? Like there was purpose to its building, right? To it being built, to the style of the stones, the direction of the stones, the way that it was positioned, you know, the way that it worked within, you know, the solar system and all of those things for its area in the world. All of that was very specific, which is why most people believe that, you know, Stonehenge is, you know, of all things, very much, you know, a pagan structure. It's an occult structure. You know, and here's one of the reasons why I think that, like, when we look at the old world and we look at a lot of things and we sit there and say, well, that's not inherently, you know, occult, right? Because our definition of what occult is has changed. Right? When we look at occult, and we say occult, and we say pagan, and we say magic, we're saying something very specific. Right? We think of very specific things. We think of athame, we think of pentagram, we think of pentacle, we think of, you know, as above, so below, we think of incantation, we think of rhymes, we think of all of these things. For the old world, it was everything, man. It was everything. Like the littlest fucking thing was magic. The jewelry that was worn, the clothing that was worn, the structures that were built, the way things were built, why things were built, everything was connected to the practice, which is why it seems so simple, which is why a lot of things I think are overlooked when it comes to old world magic. Because by modern day standards, we don't look at a piece of pottery and say, oh, that's a cult. We don't look at a house and say, oh, that's a cult. But the old world, they did. Everything that they did tied in to that belief, to the energies that existed around us. And it's not just like, it's not directed towards like one god or anything like that. Like when we look at the ancient Greeks and things like that, like what we associate with the faith are the temples, right? We look at the temples and look at, oh, that's obvious, right? That's, you know, where religion was held and all of this stuff. And we overlook everything else. We don't tie things in the way that it should be tied in. And the reason we don't is because by today's standards, we have faith and then we have life. Our faith, and one of the reasons why I think we've lost touch with the current, that magical current that allows us to do things that our ancestors could do that we could only dream of doing, is because we do not tie our faith into day-to-day life. And now how you do that, that's up to you. Like, I mean, I don't give a shit. I'm not here to give you a guideline of what you should or shouldn't do, but that is what's missing in modern day magic, right? At least from my understanding and everything that I've looked at, right? So those are things kind of like constraints that creates depth, right? So when we understood, or they understood, our ancestors understood, like when it came to planetary hours, consecrations, all this stuff, they didn't have to think about this shit. They just did it, right? Like us, like we have to crack open fucking, you know, a lunar tracker and, you know, look at our ancestors just knew this shit, man. Like they looked up at the sky and like, yeah, today's a good night. Today's a good day. Like they just knew it. We don't. So how in sync are we actually living with, like with that energy that we want to tap into? Not very, I don't think, right? If we look at Owen Davis, or Davies, on Grimoires, right? So Grimoires carried highly systemized ritual methods, right? Transmission often, right? Secret or semi-clandestine, right? And practitioners believed in high risk, high reward contact with spirits. Okay. And this is like, you know, Owen Davies, if you look at like the Oxford University Press, right? So this is the big part right here, right? So practitioners believed in high risk, high reward contact with spirits. What does that mean? It's something I've been saying for years. Like, so like when you go into ritual, sometimes dig. Sometimes what you need isn't going to come from something you know. Sometimes we must truly practice the occult, the hidden. Look for the hidden, find the hidden knowledge, right? I mean, take your precautions, do your protections, all of these things, but actually go in and try to touch something that nobody's touched before. Build a relationship, build a connection. So there's actually, growth is pushing your limits. Exactly, 100%. So there's actually a video that I've been meaning to do for a while now, and it just hasn't felt like the right time to do it. So I have a series of sigils and names of entities that I have come in contact with and worked with to some degree, that are not, like they're not like major entities or anything like that, but they have their place, right? And I just kind of call them the lesser demonic. And so I have a bunch of sigils. In total, I'm looking at them right now. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So 6 different ones that I've fucked around with, that I kind of got into contact with, and honestly, like it was interesting, and I'm kind of proud that I've done this. Now, none of these are like major players or anything like that, but they got results. I got results from working with these, and I'm kind of in debate, like after the release of Leora and Pip and the Book of Baphomet, whether or not to do a completely different book about these things. Sometimes evil, like we need to run from shit to understand what it is that we're missing out on. I've been in the occult since I was a kid, but I've not been into it as I have been for like the last 10 years. You know what I mean? So like I've always been into the occult. Like I've always done the tarot, I've always done ritual, I've always done spells. Like I used to be very earthbound. To this day, like, if I have the opportunity to do a ritual outside, like in a valley surrounded by trees or something, like I'll do that. Earth connection is just nothing compares to it. But the last 10 years has been like my deep dive, and sometimes we need that point of comparison, right? Like sometimes we need to be irresponsible to understand how important responsibility is. Sometimes, we need to be at rock bottom and uncomfortable and unsafe to understand the importance of stability and safety created by ourselves. You know what I mean? So never be self-deprecating to your learning process. You may wish that you have done it sooner, but there's a reason you didn't. And there's going to be something that you're going to be able to do. Put the kiddo. Hey, Mr. Grimm, thanks for swinging through. Appreciate it. Enjoy that, baby. So, your process and what you've been through, don't ever think that it makes you less. Any of you, anyone that hears this, and this isn't some super positive foo-foo juju magic type shit or light worker bullshit. This is just fucking fact, right? Don't ever feel that because you had to go through a certain process before you got to where you are today, or that maybe you're going through a process right now and you want to get to where some of us are now later. Don't hate your process. You need that shit. Like you do. I mean, I've talked about it a million times. I mean, I got the shit beat out of me as a kid. You know, I've had like horrible shit happen to me when I was a kid. But I don't hate it. I don't. Like, I would never treat either of my boys the way that I was treated. Not even a fraction of that way. But for me, for myself, to a certain degree, to a certain level, I'm thankful. I'm grateful for the trauma that was imparted onto me, because it makes me who I am today. And I mean, there's aspects of that, you know, there's nuances, obviously, right? There's aspects that, you know, just hurt all the time. But for the most part, I know that I am who I am today, and I am the way that I am today because of, you know, what it is that, you know, I've been through. And I wouldn't change it for anything, because if I change one thing about my past, anything like that one thing could be the marker that makes it so I don't meet Dyra, that I don't have one of my boys, that I don't live the life that I live right now. And it's not a cakewalk all the time, you know. It's, you know, there's always, you know, there's financial trouble, there's this, there's that, and this normal shit that everybody deals with. But, you know, I am where I am and doing what I'm doing because of the things that happened in my past. And because I am grateful for everything that I have today, I am grateful for everything that I had to deal with yesterday. So never beat yourself up because you didn't get into it sooner, or because you couldn't get into it sooner, or because somebody was a fucking asshole to you. You know, be grateful for your enemies. Be grateful for your pain. Because if you're grateful for today, you wouldn't have today if it wasn't for yesterday. You know, hardship serves as catalysts to help us grow. They're not right or wrong, but can be a potential opportunity for us to help us grow. 100%. 100%. You know, so, and don't misunderstand it, right? Like, none of this is like justification for abuse or somebody traumatizing you or victimizing you. You know, there's no justification for that shit. But at the other end of it, if you are grateful for today, then you have to be grateful for yesterday. That's the only way. That's just, you know, how I look at it. But continuing down this, like I said, with, you know, this kind of like, you know, tradition is kind of like a power engine here, right? So even like with Renaissance magicians, like they saw their work as part of like a cosmic project, not self-care with candles, right? Like, so it's because systems were stable, depth came from repetition, not constant reinvention. And I think this is kind of like one of the problems with modern occultism, is we're constantly trying to reinvent the wheel here, right? And I keep talking about this, and like I keep talking about it because I'm trying to work it out in my head, how to put it out there as best as possible. And, you know, it's not to say that, you know, mixing things together, you know, exactly, it's never justified, but we can still use it to our advantage. 100%. 100%. I'm a cool meow meow. Rock on. Rock on. I would rather be a cool meow meow than a cool woof woof. I cannot believe I just fucking said that. What the fuck, man? Um, good morning. But, um, so I do think that, one of the problems with the occult today is this constant, like, reconstruction of shit, right? And then the fact that everybody's coming out of the woodwork saying, like, I have the facts, I have the reality, follow me and do exactly as I do, and you will be powerful too. And it's bullshit. It's fucking bullshit. It's like, I think Eminem kind of put it best, right? Follow me and do exactly like I did. Get fucked up on, was it try Sid and get fucked up worse than my life is, and that's the thing, right? Never follow. But that also doesn't mean you need to recreate the wheel every fucking time, right? Our ancestors came up with systems. These systems worked. They worked for a reason, right? And this is across all cultures. It wasn't really about the gods, was it? It wasn't about the gods. It wasn't about the demons. It was about the systems. The systems are what made these things work. Think about that for a second. Think about that. Across cultures, across pantheons, across time, our ancestors, our occult ancestors, before this shit was even called the occult, worshipped or worked with different gods depending on region. They had different names. They had, different ways that they did things, but they all had systems. They had systems that integrated into every aspect of their lives. Something we don't have. We don't have the systems, right? When I talk about a system, I'm not talking about the tools on your altar. I'm not talking about the candles that you light. I'm not talking about that's part of a system, but that isn't the whole of the system. When we talk about a system, what are we talking about? We're talking about those little small aspects of every single day of your life. Everything that you do, everything that you say. We know the power of words. As occultists, as spellcasters, we know the power of words. We know words have power, right? We also know, we also understand, let's be completely honest. Sticks and stones, they're not going to break your bones, but words do fucking hurt. They hurt. Words do hurt. That's not a victim mentality, right? Like, I tell my kid, right? Somebody's picking on you, somebody's making fun of you, you give them 2 warnings. Leave me alone, go away, whatever. They don't, lay them the fuck out, right? Just lay them the fuck out. Up the ante, get rid of the problem, shut it down. Why? Because words fucking hurt. And you shouldn't have to deal with them. Real world consequences. So the point is, as spellcasters, as occultists, we understand the power of words. We know words and intention work in tandem, right? We also know, we also understand, like, even if we look at somebody like, fucking Bruce Lee, they understood that you should, self-deprecating humor or being self-deprecating is horrible to the psyche, right? The mind doesn't understand that you're joking, right? Oh, I'm such a fucking idiot. Your brain doesn't know that you're joking. Your body doesn't know that you're joking. Your consciousness may know, but the rest of you has no fucking idea because it has the same effect. Psychologists have written about this. So that whole little nursery rhyme about words not hurting it's bullshit. Words hurt. Words carry power. We know this. Everything you say and everything you do carries energy. So then you have to sit there and think, is that what we're missing? Is that the key to all of this that we're fucking missing? And we refuse, to incorporate. Because I know a lot of people that think that just because they sit down in front of an altar and they light a couple of candles and they say a few fancy words, that then that's it, right? You need to carry intention with you every day, all day, through everything that you do. If you want a new job, if you want more money, if you want to fall in love, if you like whatever the fuck it is you want in your goddamn life, you know, you need to carry the intention. And we don't. Our ancestors did. Our ancestors did. Our ancestors understood this shit. We're missing the script, right? Unfortunately, like a lot of that information has been lost to time, right? The Crusades and all that shit in every region of the world, you know, Mesopotamia, you know, fucking Sumerians, you know, the Celts, the Druids, like, you know, all of these cultures throughout history. Like we've got bits and pieces, but we don't have the whole system. And I guess that was intentional. And unfortunately, we don't really have a way. Like most of what we have is just guesses. They're our best guesses that we have for this shit. Tradition, when we talk about tradition, it's not about doing what grandpa did because you're afraid of change. Tradition is repetition under pressure. It is doing the same operation in the same structure inside of the same worldview until something finally answers you back. The old magicians were not strong because they were from the past. They were strong because they stood in a line of practice that did not bend for every new trend. They had power in that. They had power in knowing what they did worked, and they knew how things functioned. They had years and years of experience and knowledge behind them and results to do the things that they were able to do, right? So what did they actually do that we've lost, right? So examples from like historical magic, we've got ritual for possession, right? Or oracle speaking, demonic pacts, complex astrological operations, right? The ars notaria, promising infused knowledge and memory through long ritual discipline, right? Like, I mean, you know, and through these, like, you've got reports of, you know, visionary experiences, oracle statements, you know, or oracle-like states, prophetic and instant learning claims have happened with people that have practiced this and followed these, you know, these instructions out the way that they were written, right? You know, we can't empirically prove like they're Hollywood level feats, right? We can't do that, right? But what we can do, we can see how serious their frameworks were, and we can measure the level of cost, risk, and total life involvement that most modern practitioners will not touch, right? Magic was often bound up with social danger, heresy, witchcraft charges, economic costs, time, materials, books, you know, religious conflicts, you know, all of these types of things. You know, so when we look at the stuff, we can see the level in which the magicians of the old world dedicated their lives to practice. And, you know, in consequence, the results they were able to get. Do I believe every story about a medieval magician is literal fact? No, I don't. Do I believe they were operating on a level of commitment that makes most of us look like weekend tourists? Yeah, 100%. When you're risking prison, excommunication, or worse, you know, or worse, to call a spirit, You're not just trying something. You're bettering your life, you know, into a system that works, right? Right? So you're risking everything for this. And then that's what we're talking about, right? It's like, think about it. Most of us would like to sit there and say that, like, if it was a situation like, you know, I don't know, fucking Germany, Russia, whatever, where it's like, you know, witchcraft is outlawed, you know, you're going to get stoned to death for practicing witchcraft. Most people would probably just be like, all right, whatever, I'm just going to do whatever you tell me to do because, you know, my life has more value, right? Self-preservation type shit. And just not take the risk. But our ancestors, those motherfuckers, like, it was fuck. Even when we look at like Afro-Caribbean like practices, like when they came over to the United States, you know, those motherfuckers found ways to do shit. They started using, like, you know, the Virgin Mary and Jesus and stuff like that to represent their shit. They started incorporating, you know, the prayers to Mary and to Jesus and to God and to the saints and all this stuff. But the beauty of it is, it wasn't to Mary. It wasn't to Jesus, you know, and this is one of the things I think that a lot of people, like, you know, are missing the fucking point of, right? You know, like, so many of these, you know, traditions kind of keep going, and, you know, and now it's incorporated into like some weird mutant form of like folk Catholicism, when it has nothing to do with Catholicism. These people continued to practice their magic despite the fact that a motherfucker would kill them if they ever understood what it was that they were actually doing. That's like the type of commitment that I'm talking about that I think most modern occultists are missing, is the level of dedication. The motherfucker, I'm going to do this whether you, like, you threaten to kill me, whatever, doesn't matter. I'm still going to do this shit. Like, this is still going to happen, right? And I just think that's a beautiful fucking thing, you know, but to have that level of dedication inside of yourself, right? So what happened to that world, right? Like, you cannot take a practice that used to sit inside an entire civilization and then expect the same power when you shrink it down to a weekend workshop between Amazon deliveries. The old world died. The church, the court, the village, the sky calendar, the whole structure that locked those practices into reality got torn apart. What we inherit are fragments. And it's our responsibility to incorporate as much of this into our lives as possible, right? So the collapse arc is like, so you got the reformation and counter-reformation attacks on superstition and magical religion, witchcraft persecutions, and demonological panic, the Enlightenment, rationalism, the marginalization of occult knowledge as irrational, right? All of these things happened. And it keeps getting pushed, right? Like this idea that magic isn't real, that, like, you know, the idea of magic is irrational, that the idea of, like, you know, these practices to make people not believe. Right? And I'm a skeptic, right? I mean, I know today, like, I don't sound like one, but I am. I'm a skeptic, right? When people start talking about shit, like, I'm just going, really? But goddamn, like, I believe in this shit in a way that, like, when I was a kid, that I wished, I believed that by 2025, like, Star Trek would be real. Like, we would be traveling to other galaxies and shit. You know, when I was a kid, like, I thought that was where we're going to be at right now, or at least living somewhere else in the solar system. Obviously that didn't happen, but I know there's something to this. I know it. Balls to bones. Like I know that there's something to this. We're missing the point when we get into this shit. We're missing it. Yeah. So esoteric currents go underground, then revive, right? So 18th and 19th century occult revival, Freemasonry, Theosophy, right? You know, Rosicrucianism, like all these things, right? You know, Western esotericism becomes rejected knowledge, right? And later got filtered through secular cultures. You know, the social world that support total life magic practice breaks, right? Occultism becomes a subculture, not a world. And then that's I think that's the problem. We're a subculture. You know, it's most people look at like what we say and, you know, like, I mean, for fuck's sake. I mean, when I'm doing, you know, when I do these fucking lives, you know, like a lot of the comments I get after them, I don't know how many people decide to call me a fucking edgelord. It's like, motherfucker, I'm 40 years old, man. Like, I mean, this is who I am. I'm not a fucking edgelord. I'm not doing this for anybody else. Welcome back, man. Welcome back. You know, I'm not doing this for anybody else. I don't dress the way that I dress, you know, because I'm trying to get a reaction. I don't think the way that I think or say the things that I say because I'm trying to get a reaction. What I say is what I actually fucking believe. I'm actually fine with the majority not believing in the power of magic. Started believing in it, then there is a risk of us going back to the witch trials. This is true. This is true. There's logic to that statement. There's logic and there's reason to that statement. And I do not disagree with you. Because not everybody that believes in magic wants to use magic. What happened in the Crusades, right? Trust me, the church believed in magic, right? Trust me. Like during the Crusades, right? The church believed in magic, right? The church today will tell you that it's not real, that it's a fairy tale. Because, you know, psychological manipulation is significantly easier than, you know, fucking genocide to entire fucking cultures and, you know, shit like that to kind of shut shit down, right? So even the church will sit there and tell you that magic isn't real, that it's, you know, it's Hollywood, it's make-believe, witches aren't real, you know, all this shit. And why would they? I mean, they perpetrated the Crusades. And what were the Crusades about, right? The Crusades, I mean, some people, you know, want to sit there and say, oh, it was defensive. It might have started that way, but then it turned into like kill anybody that believes in a different God than we do. That's what happened, right? So, you know, trust me, the church does believe in magic. The church knows that magic is real. The church understood and the church knew that without destroying the cultures that perpetuated magic, that practiced magic, that had this synchronicity with nature and the energies that exist in the universe, that lived in tandem and balance with the world around them, if they didn't eradicate those cultures or convert those cultures and destroy or hold on to the literature that was created by these cultures that perpetuated the magic, that perpetuated the belief, that showed people how to actually live, that they wouldn't have control. And then what does the church do? What does the Abrahamic triptych do? What does, you know, Islam, Judaism, and Christianity do? They throw us scraps. They throw us little pieces to keep us appeased. Right? Fucking the Ars Goetia. Cliffoth. Right? You know, we get little pieces of the puzzle to keep us appeased. And you know what? It works. How many people go through YouTube and look up the Goetia? How many YouTubers, occult content creators, how many focus on this shit exclusively without digging any deeper than the book itself? How many? Countless. Countless. How many YouTube videos are there about going through the cliff off, working the tree? The alchemy that exists in that. Countless. How many actually talk about the idea and the possibility that, wait a minute, there might be some truth to this, but there's more behind it. There has to be more behind it. What else is there? Not that many. Not that many. Most stop at that and say, yeah, we're good. We're good. That's it. That's all we need. I'm not satisfied with that. I'm not okay with that. I refuse to believe that that's it, that these little scraps that Christianity and Judaism and Islam threw at us. I mean, with Islam, it's the jinn. With Judaism, it's the Cliffoth and Lilith, and, Jewish mysticism. And with Christianity, you got the Ars Goetia, a lot of Christian videos. Yeah, dude, like it's rampant. Shit's rampant. What was the whole thing? Like, I mean, that's where Leora and Pip came from. Like, I mean, I looked up for occult shit for kids. It blows my fucking mind the amount of occult parents there are, and the fact that there is like no occult literature or anything for kids, for parents to use for their kids. Nothing. Nothing? Like, really nothing? Nothing? That speaks volumes to me. I don't know about you guys, but I mean, that speaks fucking volumes to me. Right? In fact, most publishers won't touch it. They won't touch it. Anyways, that tried to make anything for kids, publishers won't touch it. Why is that? Right? Because the thing is if we get our kids young, right, and we teach our children, right, as occultists, our families, our children, we teach our children the principles of magic and occultism, and in my case, the left-hand path. The principles, the fundamentals, the ideas, the values, not the rituals, not the demons, not the, not that shit. We are going to create a generation of magicians so much more powerful than we are, if they so choose to go down that path. And that's what we need. We need that. We need that advancement, because Judaism, Islam, and Christianity have a monopoly on kids' materials. We have nothing. Nothing. Right? So, New Age, chaos magic, an eclectic problem. So modern spirituality becomes so individualistic, consumer-oriented, and pick-a-mix, right? That any power that any pantheon had by itself just goes out the fucking window. It really does, right? People blending Norse gods, Goetia, Reiki, Santeria, pop psychology with no lineage and no discipline. Confused pantheons, inconsistent cosmologies, everything flattened into energy, right? Everything is high vibrational, low vibrational, and that encompasses everything. And then we add into the internet era instant access to grimoires, scans, translations, no filter for maturity, readiness, or training. As Davies notes, grimoires have never been more available, but they are often read as curiosities, not lived systems. Lived systems, people, right? Horizontal spread of information, vertical depth of tradition collapses. We have all the information, but the depth isn't there anymore. It's gone. We forgot about it. We took systems that were once protected, encoded, and lived, and we turned them into fucking Pinterest boards. Now you have people mixing pantheons like cocktails with no understanding of the cosmologies behind them, then complaining that magic doesn't work. It is not the old powers disappeared. It's that we stopped building the conditions that woke them up. We are responsible for that. The power's fucking there. We're just not dedicating enough to it. Our ancestors understood that certain things needed to be in place for shit to work. They knew this. And now it's just, everything's surface level. Everything is fucking surface level now. Everything's about the statues. Sometimes it gets really shallow. It's just about the statues and the sigils and, you know, all of this shit. And it doesn't go any deeper. Jack of all trades, master of none. Dude, that is definitely me. As a Gemini with ADHD, fuck. But our ancestors understood that the lived systems that needed to be in place for the shit to work, for the shit to function, they knew. They knew. They knew. They understood. And it's something that we need to do as well. What makes me look cool is today's motto. Exactly. Exactly. Right? So, are we further from true magic, and can we get back? We do not know how far the old magicians actually got. We only know that whatever they were doing, it was serious enough to scare church and state at the same time. What I will say is this. Every time I commit fully to a system, take it seriously, keep my word to the spirits and to myself, the work gets heavier and more real. Every time I treat the work like content, it dies. If it feels like we are far from real magic, it's because we are. But that distance is made of our own laziness, not a lack of spirits, not a lack of pantheon, not a lack of direction. It's a lack of discipline. It's a lack of taking shit seriously. Now, I went a little over time here. I gotta go get one kid up for school, and I have to help Dyra with the little one. I beg you guys to just think about what I said here. You don't have to change anything you do. What works for you works for you. And I'm proud of you for everything that you do. I really am proud of all of you. Just take into consideration what I've said. And maybe by creating lived-in systems, even if it's individually, we can get a fraction back of what the new world pushed us away from. Thank you all for being here. You guys are fucking amazing. I will see you guys tomorrow morning. And as always, hail thy fucking self. We'll see you in the next one. Peace the fuck out.